It's almost 1 in the morning. You've been working for 2 hours. I don't want you driving home like this." She stopped, took one breath, then looked him straight in the eyes and said it plainly. "There's a guest room. It's empty. Do you want to sleep here tonight?" Marcus Cole's wrench hit the marble floor. He was a maintenance worker, a single father who hadn't been looked at that way in 4 years. And she, Natalie Harrington, was the most powerful woman in this building, and she was waiting for his answer. If your heart is already pounding, hit subscribe, ring that bell, and drop your city name in the comments right now. I want to see exactly how far this story travels. Now let's go back to where it all started. The call came at 9:47 p.m., and Marcus almost didn't answer it. He was elbow deep in Emma's science project styrofoam base-colored markers. Index cards spread across the entire kitchen table when his phone buzzed, and Dale's name lit up the screen. Marcus stared at it for exactly 3 seconds, weighing the cost of ignoring it against the cost of the mortgage. And then he answered. "Tell me it's quick," Marcus said. "It's not quick," Dale said. 42nd floor, Harrington Tower. The CEO's private suite, all the overhead lighting blew a circuit, and she has a board presentation at 7 a.m. "I need my best guy, Marcus, tonight." "Dale, I've got Emma. I'll add 2 hours overtime. Cash." Marcus looked at the kitchen table, at Emma's project, at the index card in the center that said in careful 8-year-old block letters, "Plants grow toward light because they have to. They don't get to choose." He thought about the electricity bill that had come Friday. He thought about the babysitter's number on the refrigerator. "Give me 20 minutes, he said. "You're a lifesaver." "You owe me, Dale." "I always owe you. That's our whole relationship." Marcus was already looking for his keys. "Hey." The babysitter, Mrs. Okafor from 4B, came up in her bathrobe and her reading glasses, and did not complain once, which was one of the many reasons Marcus considered her one of the genuinely good people in the world. She settled into the armchair with her book before he even had his jacket on. "Emma's asleep," she asked. 20 minutes ago. She went down easy." He grabbed his toolbox from the closet. "I shouldn't be more than 2.5 hours." Mrs. Okafor looked at him over her glasses. "Marcus?" "Ma'am?" "You look tired." "I'm fine." "You always say that." He paused with his hand on the door. He almost said something honest. Instead he said, "Thank you, Mrs. Okafor," and went out into the hallway and pulled the door shut behind him. He stood there alone in the corridor for a moment. 42 floors up. Midnight job. 2 hours overtime. Fine, he told himself. This is fine. Wag. Mini climax. Number 1. The lobby of Harrington Tower at 10:30 p.m. was not the lobby Marcus usually saw. During business hours, it was all motion-suited professionals, spinning doors, the sharp percussion of heels on marble. At night, it was almost cathedral-quiet security desk, lit up like an island in the dark, single guard behind the glass looking up as Marcus pushed through the doors. "Maintenance call," Marcus said, setting his toolbox on the desk. "Marcus Cole. Dale Whitfield sent the work order." The guard, young, early 20s, name tag reading. Jerome checked his screen, checked it again. His expression shifted in a way that Marcus noticed. "Suite 4200, Jerome said carefully. "That's the executive private floor." "I know." "Ms. Harrington's personal office." "I know." Jerome looked at him, at his jacket, at his toolbox, at the calluses on his hands, and then looked back at his screen with the particular careful neutrality of someone who has been trained not to say certain things out loud. "I'll need to call up for confirmation," Jerome said. "Go ahead." Jerome picked up the desk phone. Marcus listened to one side of a brief conversation. Jerome said maintenance worker, in a tone that somehow managed to make 2 ordinary words sound like a question about whether this was truly happening. Then he nodded, hung up, and printed Marcus's visitor badge with the expression of a man who had decided something was someone else's problem. 42nd floor, Jerome said. "Elevator's on your right. She's expecting you." Marcus clipped on his badge. "Thank you, Jerome." Jerome was already looking back at his screen. The elevator doors opened at 11:02 p.m., and Marcus stepped onto a floor that felt like an entirely different building. He had worked in Harrington Tower for 3 years. He knew its mechanical rooms, and its utility closets, and its breaker panels the way he knew the back of his own hand. He had never been to the 42nd floor. The carpet was the color of charcoal. The walls were a warm, dense cream. Everything was lit by recessed fixtures, or had been before the circuit blew, and in their absence, the emergency baseboard strips threw long gold lines across the floor that made the whole corridor feel like something between an art gallery and a confession booth. He found Suite 4200 and knocked twice on the frosted glass. Silence. He knocked again louder. Maintenance. Marcus Cole. A voice came from somewhere inside, not close to the door, low-controlled and unmistakably female. "It's open." He pushed the door. The office was large. That was the first thing. Large in the way that things are large when they have been deliberately designed to communicate a kind of authority. High ceilings, clean lines, a desk that cost more than Marcus made in 4 months. But the desk was empty. The woman was on the floor. Mini climax. Number 2. Not collapsed. Not distressed. Sitting cross-legged on the carpet near the windows, a semicircle of manila folders spread around her, a legal pad on her knee writing. She was wearing a charcoal blazer over a white shirt, and her feet were bare one small specific detail that hit Marcus with a force entirely disproportionate to its size, because it was the only human thing in a room otherwise built for performance. She looked up when he came in. Dark eyes direct, and unself-conscious about being direct. "Marcus Cole," she said. "Yes, ma'am." "Natalie." She said it simply. "The panel's behind the credenza, the long one left wall, third panel in. I've reset it twice. It trips the moment the overhead load kicks in." She glanced at the legal pad, then back at him. "Do you need anything water coffee, though? Fair warning, it's been sitting since 8 and it's terrible." Marcus took a breath. He'd been expecting someone who would ignore him. Someone who would point at the problem and go back to their phone call. He hadn't been expecting someone sitting barefoot on an expensive carpet, offering him terrible coffee, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I'm good," he said. "Thank you." He crossed the office toward the credenza. He worked in practiced silence. That was one of the skills that 6 years of maintenance work had built in him, the ability to be present in a room without taking up space to focus narrowly on the task, to become almost invisible. He found the panel, ran his voltage tester, and identified the problem inside 4 minutes. 2 mismatched breakers, he said. Someone wired 20-amp breakers on a 15-amp circuit. It can carry the normal load, but the moment everything runs at once, the overheads, the monitors, the climate system, it trips. He looked over at her. "You've been running this circuit like this for a while." "Is that dangerous?" "Not yet. Would have been given another few months." He pulled his breaker kit out. "I can fix it tonight, but I need to pull the right gauge breakers from my truck. 40 minutes total." Natalie looked at him steadily. "40 minutes?" she repeated. "Yes, ma'am." "A beat. Then I'll stay out of your way." Mini climax. Number 3. He went down to the truck. He came back up. He worked. She worked. The office held them both in its dim, quiet way, and Marcus found himself against his better judgment, aware of her not intrusively, not uncomfortably, just present in the way that people become present when they share a space and a silence long enough. The scratch of her pen, the soft rustle of a page turning, the occasional exhale that meant she'd found something in a document she hadn't liked. After 20 minutes, she said without looking up from her legal pad, "How long have you been at the building?" 6 years, Marcus said. "Do you like it?" He considered the question honestly. "I like the work, the puzzles of it, finding what's wrong and making it right. That part I like." "And the other parts?" He kept his hands moving on the panel. "You do what you have to do." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "I know that feeling." He glanced at her. She was still writing, but there was something different in the set of her shoulders. Something that said the words had been meant. "You have a daughter," she said. He stopped. How do you know that? Jerome called up before you arrived. He mentioned it. She looked up. I hope you didn't have to pull her away from anything. She was asleep, Marcus said. She's 8. She's usually asleep by 8:30. He paused. She left me a note on the kitchen counter before she went to bed. She does that, writes me notes when she knows I'll be out late, so I see something when I come home. Natalie's pen went still. What did tonight's note say? She asked. Her voice was careful, like she understood she was asking about something real. Marcus exhaled slowly. It said, Dad, I saved you the last cookie. Don't eat it until you sit down. Love, Emma. P.S. The cactus is fine, I checked. The room was very quiet for a moment. Then Natalie said very softly, She checks on your cactus. She checks on everything. She worries. He half smiled. She's 8 going on 45. Natalie looked back down at her legal pad, but she didn't write anything for a while. So, mini climax number 4. I had a cactus, Natalie said some minutes later. I killed it. She said it with the flat precision of someone filing a report. 6 months on that windowsill. I overwatered it. I thought I was taking care of it. I was actually drowning it. A pause. The plant specialist I consulted? Yes, I consulted a plant specialist, don't judge me. Said I was giving it 3 times the water it needed. Said sometimes caring too much is its own kind of damage. Marcus looked at her. A plant specialist. I was determined to keep it alive. For the plant's sake. She thought about that for a moment longer than seemed necessary. I'm not entirely sure anymore, she said. Marcus went back to his panel. But the word sat with him, sometimes caring too much is its own kind of damage, and he thought about people he had known for whom that had been true, and wondered if she was thinking about the same kind of people. He thought she was. Mini climax, number 5. He replaced the first breaker, then the second. He ran a final test tracing load distribution across the circuit, confirming the connections. Everything checked. He reached for the main switch. Ready? He called. Natalie looked up from the floor. Go ahead? He flipped it. The ceiling came alive, every recessed light all at once, flooding the office with warm, full light that reached every corner and every surface and fell across Natalie Harrington, sitting in the middle of it, surrounded by her work, barefoot on the expensive carpet, looking up at the lights with an expression Marcus would remember for a long time. Not relief exactly. Something quieter than relief. Something like recognition. Like she had been in the dark longer than just tonight. Thank you, she said. She wasn't looking at him. She was still looking at the ceiling. Thank you. That's what I'm here for, Marcus said. She looked at him then. No, she said simply. That's not why I'm thanking you. Balk. Mini climax number 6. Marcus packed his tools. The rhythm of it, methodical, practiced, familiar, was an anchor he was grateful for because the rest of the room didn't feel particularly anchored. He was zipping his bag when the door to the suite opened without a knock. The man was 60, maybe 62, with the particular posture of someone who has never had to ask permission to enter a room. Silver hair. Dark suit, a watch that Marcus's entire truck payment wouldn't touch. He looked at Marcus the way you look at a piece of furniture that has been placed somewhere inconvenient. Then he looked at Natalie. I saw the lights come on. I was still in the building. He said it like an accusation disguised as information. Who is this? Maintenance, Natalie said. Her voice had changed completely. Still controlled, but with a tension underneath it that hadn't been there 10 seconds ago. He fixed the circuit issue I told you about last week. You called maintenance up here at this hour. The lighting was down. I have a board presentation at 7. The man and Marcus understood without being told that this was Richard Harrington, that this was her father, looked at Marcus again. That same slow, pricing look. You can go, Richard said. Not to Natalie, to Marcus. Marcus held the look for exactly the length of time it took to decide who he was in this moment, then picked up his toolbox and said, Good night, to the room in general, and walked to the door. Marcus. He stopped. It was Natalie's voice. He turned. She was standing now, and she was looking at him with something urgent and specific in her eyes, not asking him to stay, not able to ask him anything with her father 3 feet away, but communicating something nonetheless. He wasn't sure what it was. He wasn't sure she was sure. "Thank you," she said, "for coming tonight." "Anytime," he said. The word left his mouth and sat between them with more weight than 2 syllables should carry. He walked out. Mini climax. Number 7. The hallway. In the corridor waiting for the elevator, Marcus stood still and breathed. He heard voices through the frosted glass. Richard Harrington's first sharp and controlled, "Who is he? How long has he been in this building?" Then Natalie's quieter, but with an edge that had not been there when she'd offered Marcus terrible coffee. "He's been here 6 years, Dad. He's good at his job. That's all you need to know." "That's all I said that's all." The elevator arrived. Marcus stepped in. The doors closed. He stood alone in the descending elevator with his toolbox and the echo of her voice saying, "That's all you need to know," with the particular precision of someone drawing a line. He thought about the way she'd looked at him when she said thank you for coming tonight. He thought about Emma's note on the kitchen table. "Don't eat it until you sit down." He thought about sitting down. The lobby came up. The doors opened. Jerome looked up from the security desk. "All set?" Jerome asked. "All set," Marcus said. Jerome nodded slowly. Then, after a beat, quieter. "She doing all right up there, Ms. Harrington? She's been here since 6 a.m. Marcus considered the question for a moment. Considered the woman on the floor with her legal pad, and her folders, and her bare feet, and her dead cactus, and her father who had walked in and priced him without introduction. "She's doing fine," he said. He wasn't entirely sure that was true, but some things you say because they need to be said, not because you can prove them. Hig. Mini climax. Number 8. The kitchen table. He got home at 12:41 a.m. Mrs. Okafor was asleep in the armchair with her book open on her chest, glasses slightly askew. He paid her in cash, thanked her twice, and walked her to the door. Then he stood alone in his apartment. The kitchen table was still covered in Emma's project. Styrofoam base-colored markers, index cards. He stood over it the way he had stood over it before he'd left, and read her handwriting again in the quiet. Plants grow toward light because they have to. They don't get to choose. He pulled out the chair and sat down. On the counter, exactly where Emma had said it would be, was a small plate with a single cookie on it, wrapped in a paper towel with a smiley face drawn on it in marker. Marcus sat there for a long time. The apartment was completely silent. The city moved outside. His daughter slept behind her door. He thought about Natalie Harrington looking up at the ceiling when the lights came on. That expression. That quiet, complicated recognition. He thought about her father's voice through the glass. "Who is he?" He thought about her voice answering, "That's all you need to know." He unwrapped the cookie and took a bite. He sat with it. All of it. The things that had happened tonight that he didn't entirely have words for. The way a room can change when 2 people stop performing for each other and just exist honestly in the same space. The way a woman at the top of everything she'd built could sit on the floor in bare feet and still carry a loneliness that was visible if you knew how to look. He knew how to look. That he thought might be the whole problem. Mini climax. Number 9. Monday morning. He signed in at 8:02 a.m. Monday and rode the elevator to 42 with his toolbox and his work order, and the quiet determination of a man who has decided to behave professionally about something that does not feel entirely professional. He knocked. "Come in," she called. She was at her desk. Blazer pressed and formal hair clean and composed everything in its place. The CEO version fully assembled. She had her phone to her ear, and she held up one finger one moment, and Marcus moved to the secondary panel and started working. She finished her call, put the phone down. "How was your weekend?" she asked. "Good. Emma's project is finished." He checked the first breaker. "She wouldn't let me help. She said I was hover assisting and that it was a documented problem I needed to work on." There was a pause. Then Natalie said, "She's not wrong." Marcus looked over at her. She was smiling, small, genuine, the same smile from Thursday night that changed her whole face. "I mean that kindly," she said. "I know you do," he said. They worked in their respective silences for a while. The morning felt different from the night, more bounded, more appropriate, more like what they were supposed to be to each other. Marcus was grateful for that. He was also, in a way, he chose not to examine directly, not entirely grateful. He was almost done with the final breaker check when she said without preamble, "My father asked about you." Marcus's hands went still on the panel. "What did he ask?" he said. "Whether I knew your name, how long you'd been in the building." A pause. "Whether the overtime was approved through proper channels." The words were neutral on their surface. Underneath them was a structure Marcus recognized, the architecture of a certain kind of power that doesn't say what it means because it doesn't have to. He turned around slowly. Natalie was watching him. Her expression was direct, and she was not pretending the words had been neutral. "Natalie," he said. "He's going to make things difficult," she said. "Simply, factually. I want you to know that before I want you to know." "Before what?" Marcus asked. The question sat between them in the Monday morning light, open-ended and entirely sincere. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at her desk. "Before whatever this is," she said quietly. Mini Climax, Number 10, The Weight of It. Marcus packed his tools in the silence that followed. He was careful about it, methodical, the way he was always careful when something mattered, working the problem, working the hands, letting the rest of himself catch up in its own time. He zipped the bag. He straightened up. "I'm coming back Wednesday," he said. "There's a ground fault on the east wall circuit I want to trace before it becomes your problem." "Wednesday," she said. "Wednesday." He picked up the toolbox. He walked to the door. "Marcus." He stopped. Turned. She was still at her desk, hands folded, the composed CEO sitting in her composed office in the full assembled daylight. But her eyes were the same as they'd been Thursday night on the floor, direct and careful, and carrying something she hadn't quite decided whether to put down. "My father doesn't have authority over the maintenance contracts," she said, in case that was unclear. "It was clear," Marcus said. "Good." She looked at her desk, then back at him. "The coffee Wednesday will be better. I got a new machine this morning." He almost smiled. He almost said several things that under different circumstances and in a different life he might have said. He was a man who had learned to carry what he felt rather than set it loose in rooms where it had no place. He was discovering a man whose particular way of carrying things was becoming increasingly insufficient for the present situation. "Wednesday," he said. "Wednesday," she said. He walked out into the corridor and pressed the elevator button and stood there. And the building breathed around him, 42 floors of it all. Its circuits and its panels and its carefully maintained infrastructure. And somewhere up above him, at the very top of it, a woman sat at her desk and did not go back to her phone call right away. He knew that without knowing it. The elevator came. He got in. The doors closed. And Marcus Cole, single father maintenance worker, a man who had spent 6 years being invisible in buildings where people did not look at people like him, rode down through 42 floors of the city's weight and thought about a woman who sat on expensive carpet in bare feet, who killed her cactus by caring too much. Who said that's all you need to know to her father through a closed door with an edge in her voice that felt unmistakably like a door being opened. "They don't choose to grow that way," Emma had written. "They just do." The lobby rose up to meet him. The doors opened. He walked out into the morning. Wednesday came, the way important things often do, quietly, without announcement, dressed in the ordinary clothes of a regular workday. Marcus signed in at 7:58 a.m., 2 minutes earlier than Monday, which he noticed and chose not to analyze. He collected his work order, rode the elevator up, and told himself the same thing he'd been telling himself for 2 days. This was a job. A circuit trace on the east wall. Professional contained, finished by 10. He knocked on suite 4200. "It's open," she called. She was already standing when he came in, not at her desk, not on the floor, but near the windows, with a coffee mug in both hands, looking out at the city, the way people look at things they're not really seeing. She was wearing a different blazer today, deep navy, and her hair was down. That was new. Marcus noticed it and moved directly to the east wall panel. "Coffee's on the credenza," she said without turning. "I meant what I said. New machine." "I'll take you up on that," he said. He poured himself a cup. It was genuinely very good coffee. He said so. She turned from the window then, and something in her face was different from Monday, looser, less assembled. Like she hadn't fully put herself together yet, and had decided not to rush it. "My father called me last night," she said. Marcus set his mug down on the credenza and looked at her. "He ran a background check on you," she said. She wasn't softening it. She delivered it the way she delivered most things directly, because she believed people deserved the actual information. "I found out this morning. He didn't tell me he was going to do it. I found out because his assistant sent the report to my email by mistake instead of his." The room was very quiet. "What was in it?" Marcus asked. "Nothing. Your employment record here. Clean. 6 years, no incidents, consistently rated above standard by every supervisor." She paused. "Your daughter's school is listed. Her name." Marcus felt something cold move through his chest. Not panic. Something slower and more serious than panic. "He listed Emma," he said. "He listed Emma." They looked at each other across the office. "Natalie," Marcus said carefully. "What is your father trying to do?" She set her coffee mug down on the windowsill with a small, precise click. "What he always does," she said. "He identifies things he considers complications and he removes them." She held his gaze. "He considers you a complication." "I'm a maintenance worker," Marcus said. "I fixed your breakers." "I know what you are," she said. Something in the way she said it was not agreement with his description of himself. Marcus turned to the east wall panel. He opened it. He stared at the circuit board without seeing it for a moment, then made himself see it, made himself run his voltage tester along the ground fault line, the way he had come here to do. Behind him, Natalie said, "I'm sorry. I wanted you to know before someone else told you, or before you noticed something and didn't understand why." "I appreciate that," Marcus said. He kept his voice level. "Are you angry?" He paused. Tested the next connection. "I'm thinking," he said. "That's not the same as not being angry." "No," he said. "It's not." He worked in silence for a minute. She didn't feel it. That was one of the things he'd noticed about her. She didn't feel silence out of discomfort. She let it exist, which was rarer than people understood. "Does he do this with everyone?" Marcus asked finally. "Everyone he considers a variable he can't control," she said. "Business rivals, board members who push back, anyone who gets close enough to matter." She paused. "He ran one on my last boyfriend, 18 months in." Marcus looked over his shoulder. "What happened?" "He found something. A lawsuit from 8 years prior, frivolous, dismissed, but it existed. My father made sure Daniel knew he'd found it." She picked up her coffee mug again. "Daniel ended things 2 weeks later. Said he didn't want to deal with the politics." A brief, humorless exhale. He didn't phrase it that way, but that's what it was. Marcus turned back to the panel. He found the ground fault a loose, neutral connection, simple to fix 10 minutes of work. He started on it. "How long ago was that?" he asked. 14 months. "And before Daniel?" A pause. "There was no one before Daniel for a long time." Another pause. "There's been no one since." Marcus tightened the connection, moved to the next one. "My wife left when Emma was 4, he said. He hadn't planned to say it. It came out the way true things sometimes do. finding the opening on their own without invitation. She said she loved us both, but that she'd stopped knowing who she was inside the life we had. That she needed to go find out. He checked the connection. I didn't fight it. I think I understood it even while it was the worst thing that had ever happened to me. Natalie was very still behind him. Do you still understand it? She asked. Some days more than others, he said. Emma doesn't ask about her as much as she used to. That's its own thing, watching your kid make peace with something before you fully have. He finished the east wall trace, every connection clean. He closed the panel. When he turned around, Natalie was looking at him with an expression he didn't have a clean word for. It was the expression of someone who has been handed something real and is being careful with it. She sounds like an extraordinary little person, Natalie said. Emma. She is, Marcus said. She's the thing I got most right. The words landed in the room, and neither of them moved for a moment. Then Marcus's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, Emma's school, the number he always answered immediately. He held up a hand. Sorry, I have to take this. Of course, Natalie said. He stepped to the side of the office and answered. It was the school secretary, Linda, pleasant and unhurried. Emma had a small fall at morning recess. Nothing serious, a scraped knee. She was fine in the nurse's office right now, asking whether photosynthesis happened faster in warm weather. Marcus thanked her, confirmed he'd check in after work, hung up. When he lowered the phone, Natalie was watching him. Everything okay? Scraped knee, she's fine. He exhaled slowly. She's also apparently questioning the nurse about plant biology, so she's completely fine. Natalie laughed. A real one, surprised and genuine, shorter than a laugh, but warmer. It changed the whole room the way those laughs do. She fell down and her first concern was botany, Natalie said. That's my kid, Marcus. She said his name the way she always said it, without distance, without title, like it was just his name. And she was just a person saying it. Can I ask you something that is probably not appropriate for me to ask? He looked at her steadily. You can ask. Would you like to have dinner with me? The question dropped into the room like a stone into still water. Marcus stood with his toolbox in his hand and his phone in his pocket, and his daughter's scraped knee somewhere in his mind, and the east wall panel fully repaired behind him. And he looked at Natalie Harrington, at the navy blazer, and the hair that was down today, and the coffee mug, and the eyes that were doing that thing. They did that direct, careful, completely unguarded thing. And he understood that the question had taken courage, that she was not a woman who asked questions she was uncertain of the answer to, and she had asked this one anyway. Your father ran a background check on me, he said. He found my daughter's school. Yes. That's not a small thing, Natalie. I know it isn't. If I say yes to dinner, that gets more complicated, not less. I know that too. She held his gaze. I'm asking anyway. Marcus set his toolbox down on the floor. He rubbed the back of his neck with one hand, a gesture Emma called his thinking face, which she said he did with his neck instead of his face, which was accurate. Dinner, he said. Dinner, she said. A restaurant. Normal people behavior, nothing dramatic. Nothing in this building has been particularly undramatic since last Thursday, he said. Fair point. A small, genuine smile. There's a place on Clement Street. Quiet, good food, nobody I work with goes there. Thursday evening, 7 o'clock. A pause. Emma would be with her babysitter, Mrs. Okafor from 4B, Marcus said. She's better company than most adults I know. Then you have no excuse, Natalie said. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. At the woman who had sat on the floor of her office at midnight and told him she'd killed her cactus by caring too much. Who had said, that's all you need to know, to her father through a glass door, with the quiet force of someone who had been drawing that particular line for a very long time and hadn't always been able to hold it. Thursday, he said, 7 o'clock. The smile that crossed her face was not the composed professional kind. It was smaller and realer than that, the kind that happens before you can curate it. Good, she said. Now go check on your daughter's knee." He picked up his toolbox. He walked to the door. "Marcus," she called after him. He turned. "Thank you for telling me about your wife," she said it simply, no cushioning around it. "People don't usually tell me real things. I notice when they do." He stood in the doorway for a moment. "People don't usually sit on the floor of their own office and offer strangers terrible coffee," he said. "I notice things too." He went. In the elevator descending, he called Emma's school back and asked to speak to Emma directly, which the nurse allowed because Emma had apparently been asking whether she could call her dad for the last 20 minutes and had only been held off by the ongoing botany discussion. "Dad," Emma said with the gravity of someone reporting a serious scientific finding. "I fell, but I'm fine, and also I think the grass near the swings gets more afternoon sun than the grass near the building, which is why it grows faster. Do you think that's it?" "I think that's probably it," Marcus said. "I might need to do a second project." "Let's get through the first one first." "You always say that." "Because you always want to start the second project." A pause. "Is that bad?" "No," he said. The elevator reached the lobby. "It means you're curious. Curious is good." He stepped out into the morning light of the lobby. "How's your knee?" "Fine. It doesn't even really hurt. I think I just landed weird." "You landed weird," Marcus repeated. "Noted." "Dad." Her voice dropped slightly the way it did when she was about to say something she'd been thinking about for a while. "Are you okay?" He stopped walking. Jerome looked up from the security desk, and Marcus held up one finger one moment and turned slightly away. "What do you mean, bug?" "You've been weird this week," Emma said. "Like you're here but you're thinking about something else. I can tell." A beat. "Mrs. Okafor said sometimes grown-ups get preoccupied, and it doesn't mean anything is wrong. But I wanted to ask you directly because I think you'd tell me the truth." Marcus stood in the lobby of Harrington Tower with his toolbox and his phone and his completely extraordinary 8-year-old daughter on the other end of the line, asking him directly whether he was telling her the truth. "I'm okay," he said. "I promise. There's been some stuff at work that I've been thinking through. Nothing bad, just complicated." "Complicated like a circuit problem?" she asked. Because she was Emma and she listened when he talked about work and she stored things. "Complicated like a circuit problem," he said. "Yeah. You always figure those out," she said, with complete confidence, zero doubt. The faith of a child in her parents simple and devastating. "Go back to class," he said. "Don't start a second science project." "I'm just going to think about it," she said. "Thinking isn't starting." "Emma. Bye, Dad. Love you." "Love you too, Bug." She hung up. Marcus stood there for a moment longer than he needed to. Then he tucked his phone away, nodded to Jerome, and pushed out through the glass doors into the city. He made it exactly halfway to his truck when his phone buzzed again. Unknown number. He almost ignored it. Something made him answer. Marcus Cole. A man's voice smooth accustomed to being the one who calls, not the one who is called. "Speaking," Marcus said. "This is Richard Harrington." Marcus stopped walking. He was standing on the sidewalk outside Harrington Tower, and he stopped completely, and he said nothing, and he waited. "I think we should talk," Richard said. "Not in my building. Somewhere neutral. This afternoon if you're available." "I'm working this afternoon," Marcus said. "I'll make it worth your time." A pause designed to communicate that Richard Harrington had never had to say that twice to anyone. 2 o'clock. There's a cafe on Drummond Street. The Meridian. Do you know it? "I'll find it," Marcus said. "Good." Another pause. "Come alone." The line went dead. Marcus stood on the sidewalk for a long moment. Traffic moved around him. The city went about its business. 42 floors above him, in a penthouse office with newly repaired lighting and good coffee, and a woman who sat on the floor when nobody was watching, something had started something that Richard Harrington had already identified and was already moving to stop. Marcus thought about Emma on the phone. You always figure those out. He thought about Natalie's face when he'd said yes to Thursday. He thought about the background check with Emma's school on it. He put his phone back in his pocket and walked to his truck and sat in the driver's seat for a moment before starting the engine. Complicated like a circuit problem, he'd told Emma. But circuit problems, Marcus knew, didn't get complicated on their own. They got complicated when someone installed the wrong parts and then called it fine because it worked for now under normal load. They got complicated when the truth of what was actually running through the wires finally met the reality of what the wires were built to carry. He started the truck. 2 o'clock Meridian Cafe, Drummond Street. Richard Harrington wanted a conversation. Marcus had a few things he wanted to say too. He pulled out of the parking structure into the flow of the city. And the morning went on around him, ordinary and oblivious. And in his chest, something had shifted from uncertainty into something cleaner and more deliberate. He wasn't a complication. He was a man, a father. A person who showed up when called, fixed what was broken, and went home to a daughter who left him cookies wrapped in paper towels with smiley faces drawn on them. And Richard Harrington was going to sit across a cafe table from him at 2 o'clock and learn one way or another that there are some things that cannot be removed by a background check and a pointed look, and the assumption that a man with a toolbox will simply quietly disappear. Marcus drove. The city moved. Thursday was 2 days away. The Meridian Cafe on Drummond Street was the kind of place that understood discretion quiet enough that conversations didn't carry busy enough that two men sitting across from each other didn't attract attention. Marcus found it without trouble, arrived 3 minutes early, and ordered a black coffee he didn't particularly want because his hands needed something to do. Richard Harrington arrived at exactly 2 o'clock. Not 1:59, not 2:01. 2 o'clock, precisely the way men arrive when they want you to understand that their time is a controlled resource and they are choosing to spend a portion of it on you. He was wearing a different suit from Monday charcoal. This time no tie, which Marcus understood was meant to communicate casual, but communicated instead the particular effort of a powerful man performing relaxed. He sat down across from Marcus without offering his hand. "Thank you for coming," Richard said. "You asked me to," Marcus said. Richard looked at him, that same measuring look from Monday night, unhurried and thorough. Then he signaled the server and ordered an espresso, and folded his hands on the table with the patience of someone who has won negotiations by simply outlasting the other person's comfort with silence. Marcus did not fill the silence. Richard's eyes shifted slightly. A small recalibration. "You're not what I expected," he said. "What did you expect? Someone easier to read." He said it without apology, as simple observation. "The background check was standard procedure. I want you to know that." "Standard procedure for maintenance workers?" Marcus asked. "Standard procedure for anyone who spends unscheduled time alone with my daughter." Richard held his gaze. Natalie is the chief executive of a company that manages $4.2 billion in assets. Her personal security and professional reputation are not abstract concerns. "I fixed her electrical panel," Marcus said. "Twice, both times on a work order filed through your building's maintenance department." "I know what the work orders say." "Then you know there's nothing unscheduled about it." Richard picked up his espresso when it arrived, took a single sip, set it down. "Mr. Cole, I'm going to speak plainly because I think you're a man who prefers that, and frankly so do I." A pause. "My daughter has a pattern. She's always had it. She attaches herself to projects, to people who need fixing, situations that need solving. It's one of her greatest strengths professionally. Personally, it has cost her." He held Marcus's gaze steadily. "You are a single father working a maintenance job in a building she owns a stake in. I'm not saying that to diminish you. I'm saying it because that combination, the asymmetry of it, is exactly the kind of thing that appeals to Natalie's particular blind spot." Marcus was quiet for a moment. He turned his coffee mug 1/4 turn on the table. Then he said, "With respect, Mr. Harrington, I think you just described your daughter as someone who cares about people, and called it a blind spot." Something moved behind Richard's eyes. Not anger, closer to surprise. "She told you about Daniel," Richard said. "She mentioned him." "What did she say?" "That you found something in his past and made sure he knew you'd found it. Marcus said. And that he left 2 weeks later. He kept his voice even. You're about to tell me you were protecting her. Richard's jaw tightened by a fraction. I was. From a lawsuit that was dismissed. From a man whose character under pressure was exactly what I assessed it to be. He leaned forward slightly. If Daniel had been worth keeping, he would have stayed. The fact that he didn't, that tells you everything you need to know about whether I was right. Marcus looked at him for a long moment. Or it tells you that you created a situation where staying required absorbing a level of hostility that most people wouldn't accept from a girlfriend's father. And then you called his exit a character flaw. He paused. Those are two different stories about the same facts. The silence that followed was different from the earlier ones. Richard Harrington was looking at Marcus the way he might look at a contract clause he had not anticipated, with focused attention and the beginnings of genuine reassessment. You're smart, Richard said, not generously, factually. I'm a man who has had to figure things out with limited resources for a long time, Marcus said. It teaches you to read situations clearly. Then read this one clearly, Richard said. My daughter is 42 floors above us right now, preparing for a board meeting that will determine the direction of this company for the next 3 years. She is under pressure I don't think you can fully appreciate. Her personal life, her emotional focus, these things matter to her performance. A distraction right now. I'm not a distraction, Marcus said. You don't know that yet. Neither do you. Marcus held the older man's gaze without aggression, without apology. Mr. Harrington, your daughter is a grown woman who runs a $4 billion company. You just told me that yourself. And you're sitting in a cafe trying to talk a maintenance worker out of having dinner with her. A beat. Does she know you called me? Richard's silence was its own answer. Its own. No, Marcus said quietly. She doesn't. He sat back slightly. So this conversation, this is you moving without her knowledge, again. The word again landed like a wrench dropped on marble, clean and sharp and impossible to ignore. Richard's composure held, but something behind it shifted. The confidence of a man who is accustomed to being in control of the frame, meeting the discomfort of someone calmly refusing to step into it. What do you want from her? Richard asked. His voice was quieter now, less constructed. Nothing, Marcus said. I want to have dinner with a person I find interesting and honest and worth knowing. That's all I want. He paused. What do you want from her? The question hit Richard somewhere undefended. Marcus saw a brief, unguarded flash across the older man's face there, and gone before he could fully suppress it. Something that was not about strategy. Something older. Richard picked up his espresso, set it down again without drinking. She's all I have left, he said. The sentence was so quiet that Marcus almost missed it. Her mother died 6 years ago. Natalie doesn't let people close. She never has. She works. She manages. She performs every version of competence you can imagine, and she does it brilliantly, and she is alone. He stopped. His hands were still on the table. I don't handle what I can't control. I know that. It's a flaw. But she is the thing I cannot afford to get wrong. Marcus sat with that for a moment. The cafe moved around them, cups, low voices, the ordinary texture of a Wednesday afternoon, and across the table, a man who had walked into his daughter's office like he owned the room was sitting with his hands still and his espresso untouched, and the unguarded face of someone who has just said the true thing instead of the strategic one. Mr. Harrington, Marcus said, I'm a single father. I raised Emma alone for 4 years. I understand the particular terror of loving someone you can't fully protect. He let that settle. But I think you know somewhere you know that the protection you're offering Natalie is the kind that costs more than it saves. Richard looked at him. For a long time, he just looked. Then he said, If you hurt her, I'm going to dinner with her, Marcus said. Not into a contract negotiation. I can't promise you outcomes I don't control. But I can tell you that I am not a man who treats people as problems to solve or variables to manage. He held the older man's gaze. You looked me up, so you know I show up every day. I do my job. I go home to my kid. I don't have a history of making things worse for the people around me. A pause. Can you say the same? The silence after that question was the longest one yet. Richard Harrington sat across from a maintenance worker in a quiet cafe on Drummond Street, and he did not answer the question, and not answering it was its own kind of answer. He reached into his jacket pocket and placed a business card on the table between them. His personal card, not the company one. A cell number handwritten on the back in pen. If things become complicated, Richard said, call me directly. Marcus looked at the card. Then he picked it up and put it in his pocket. I'll do that, he said. Richard stood. He straightened his jacket with the automatic gesture of a man reassembling his presentation. He looked at Marcus one final time, and this look was different from all the previous ones. Not calculating, not dismissive. Something closer to reluctant, careful respect. Thursday, I assume, Richard said. Thursday, Marcus said. Richard left without looking back. Marcus sat alone with his cold coffee and the business card in his pocket, and the particular quiet of a conversation that had gone somewhere neither person had fully planned. He sat there for 4 minutes, he counted without meaning to, and then he paid for both coffees, which felt like the right thing to do, and walked back out into the afternoon. His phone buzzed as he reached his truck. Natalie's name on the screen. He answered immediately. Hi, she said. Her voice was clipped, not cold, but tight, working through something tight. Are you still in the building? Just left, Marcus said. Everything okay? A pause. My father's assistant just sent me a calendar hold for 2 o'clock today. Drummond Street, the Meridian. Another pause. Marcus, did my father contact you? Marcus leaned against his truck. The afternoon light was sharp, and he squinted slightly into it. He could feel the weight of the business card in his jacket pocket. Yes, he said. The silence on her end was not long, but it was complete the silence of someone processing something they had suspected and hoped was wrong. What did he say? She asked. He said you have a pattern of attaching yourself to projects, that I'm a distraction, that Daniel left because his character was weak, not because of pressure your father applied. Marcus paused. And then, at the end, he said you're all he has left, and that he can't afford to get you wrong. He heard her exhale, slow, controlled the breath of someone keeping a very tight grip on something. He had no right, she said quietly. No, Marcus agreed. He didn't. Are you... She stopped. Started again. Does this change Thursday? Marcus looked up at the sky for a moment at the ordinary afternoon blue of it, the clouds moving at their own speed, indifferent to everything below. No, he said. It doesn't. He heard something shift in her breathing, a release of something she'd been holding since she'd seen that calendar notification. Okay, she said, quietly. Okay, Natalie? He said her name the way he'd learned to say it, without the professional distance, without the title. Just her name, like a thing that belonged in his mouth. I'm not Daniel. A long pause. Then, I know that. A beat. I knew that Thursday night when you went home to your daughter, instead of taking the easy thing I was offering you. Marcus went very still against his truck. The guest room, he said carefully. The guest room, she confirmed. And the way she said it told him that she had been thinking about that moment for days, what it meant that she'd offered it, what it meant that he'd gone home anyway, what it meant that they were both still here, still moving toward Thursday. I'll see you tomorrow night, he said. 7 o'clock, she said. Clement Street. I'll find it. Marcus? Her voice softened at the edges. Thank you. For handling him the way you did. He's not an easy man. He loves you, Marcus said. He's just forgotten that love doesn't give you the right to run people off. Another exhale. No, she said. It doesn't. A brief pause. How's Emma's knee? The question, so small, so specific, so entirely outside the conversation they'd been having, hit him somewhere warm and unguarded. She's already forgotten about it, he said. She's thinking about a second science project. Of course she is, Natalie said, and he could hear the smile in it. They said goodbye, and Marcus drove back toward the building for his afternoon rounds, and the day moved around him the way days do, steady and indifferent, and full of the ordinary texture of things, and underneath all of it, Thursday sat like a fixed point. Everything else was orienting around. That evening he picked Emma up from after school, made pasta, listened to her develop her theory about grass growth patterns near the school's south-facing wall. He asked questions. She answered them with the thoroughness of someone who had been thinking about this since the scraped knee and wasn't about to stop. "Dad," she said, twirling pasta around her fork with the concentration of a surgeon. "Do you like someone?" He looked at her across the table. "What?" "You've been doing the neck thing," she said. "The thinking with your neck thing. And I don't know. You look like you're carrying something, but not a bad something." She pointed her fork at him with the authority of someone who has been observing this particular human for her entire conscious life. "So I'm asking, do you like someone?" Marcus put his fork down. He looked at his daughter, 8 years old, one sock off under the table, the way she always did when she got comfortable, pasta on her chin, that she hadn't noticed the absolute sharpest eyes he had ever encountered in a person of any age. "I might," he said. Because Emma had told him years ago that she could tell when he was doing the mostly true but not all the way true version of things, and he had decided then that she deserved better than that. Emma nodded, slowly processing. "Is she nice?" He thought about how to say this to an 8-year-old. "She's complicated. She's very smart. She works very hard. She's a little bit lonely, I think, even though she wouldn't say it that way." Emma considered that for a moment. "Like you," she said. Not unkindly, just observationally. "Maybe a little," Marcus said. "Does she know about me?" "Yes." "Does she seem like she cares, like actually cares? Not just the thing adults do when they're being polite?" Marcus thought about Natalie going still when he'd told her about Emma's note. He thought about the way she'd asked, "What did tonight's note say?" like the answer mattered. "Yeah," he said, "actually cares." Emma twirled more pasta, thought about it. "Okay," she said finally. "You should be happy, Dad. You're allowed." He looked at his daughter. "You're allowed." 8 years old, and she had just said the thing that Marcus had not quite been able to say to himself in 4 years of keeping his head down and doing his job and being good at the things he could control, because the things he couldn't control had already cost him enough. "Eat your pasta," he said. His voice came out slightly uneven. "I am eating my pasta," Emma said, unbothered, pointing at the evidence. He laughed, a real one, shorter than he expected. She grinned at him. And the evening went on, the way evenings do in small apartments with good kids and cold pasta, and the city moving outside the window, ordinary and relentless, and full of the kind of moments that don't feel significant while they're happening, and then later turn out to have been everything. Thursday arrived. Marcus left Emma with Mrs. Okafor at 6:30. He showered, changed into the good dark shirt he owned for occasions that required something better than work clothes, and stood in front of the mirror for a moment with the particular self-consciousness of a man who has been practical about himself for so long that something non-practical feels like wearing someone else's clothing. "You look fine," Emma called from the living room, where she was already settled with her book and her stuffed elephant, and the confidence of someone who doesn't experience self-doubt about her own appearances. "You can't even see me," Marcus called back. "I don't need to. You always look fine and you always think you don't. It's your thing." He came out of the hallway. She looked up from her book, assessed him with the thoroughness of a building inspector, and nodded once. "Yeah," she said. "You're good." "Thank you, Emma." "Don't be weird tonight," she said. "Just be you. You're good when you're you." He kissed the top of her head, thanked Mrs. Okafor, walked out into the evening. The restaurant on Clement Street was exactly what Natalie had promised: quiet, warm, the kind of place where the lighting was low enough to be comfortable, and the tables were far enough apart that conversations stayed private. He arrived at 6:58, and Natalie was already there, which surprised him, because in his experience, people with power almost never arrived first. She was at a corner table, no blazer, a dark green dress hair down the way it had been Wednesday morning. She looked up when he walked in, and the composure she wore like armor, he watched it do something he hadn't seen it do in any of their other meetings. It softened. Not disappeared, softened. The way a held breath releases. "You came," she said. "I said I would," Marcus said, sitting down across from her. "People say things," she said. "You showed up. That's different." The server came. They ordered. And the evening began. Not like a business meeting, not like an interview, not like two people trying to be impressive at each other. Like two people who had already seen each other sitting on floors and holding tools and saying honest things in quiet offices and were trying now to figure out what to do with all that seeing. She told him about her mother. He hadn't asked, she offered it somewhere between the first course and the second, the way people offer things they've been carrying when they finally find somewhere safe enough to set them down. Her mother had been the soft center of the Harrington household. She said the one who laughed at her father's strategy and reminded him that people were not assets, who had taken Natalie to the library every Saturday until she was 13 and never once suggested she was reading the wrong books. Who had died of a fast, vicious cancer 6 years ago that gave them 4 months between diagnosis and the end, which was enough time to say everything and not enough time to actually believe it was happening. After she died, Natalie said, turning her wine glass slowly, "I promoted myself to CEO within a year. I took on 3 major acquisitions. I restructured the entire East Coast portfolio." She looked at the table. "My therapist said I was building walls out of achievement. I told her I was building a legacy." A pause. "She said those weren't mutually exclusive." "She sounds right," Marcus said. "She usually is." Natalie looked up. "I stopped seeing her 8 months ago. I told myself I didn't have time. The honest version is that she was getting close to things I wasn't ready for." "What kind of things?" A pause. "The question of whether I had built a life or just a resume." She held his gaze. "What about you? Do you have a therapist?" "I have Emma," Marcus said. "Which is not a healthy substitute, and I'm aware of that." She laughed, that real one, the unguarded kind. "Honest answer." "I went for a while after my wife left. It helped. Then I stopped going because of money, and I kept meaning to go back, and—" He shrugged. "Time. It's always time." "Or," Natalie said carefully, "it's easier to be the person who carries things than the person who sets them down." Marcus looked at her. "You should call your therapist back. You should go back to yours." "Deal," he said. She held his gaze for a moment. Then very quietly, "Deal." They were on the last of their coffee when her phone vibrated on the table. She glanced at it, and her face changed, not dramatically, but enough. Her jaw set by a fraction. Her eyes went careful. She turned the phone face down. "Who was that?" Marcus asked. She looked at him directly. "My father," she said. "He sends me a quote every night at 9:30. He's done it since my mother died. It's actually the thing I can never quite hate him for, even when I want to." She paused. Tonight's was from Churchill. "Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." Marcus looked at her. He sent that tonight. He sent that tonight. They both understood what it meant. That Richard Harrington, in his particular and infuriating and genuinely loving way, was telling his daughter something across the distance of a cell phone quote, something about courage, about continuing, about the fact that he was watching, and that perhaps, maybe, possibly, he was not entirely set against what was happening, or he was reminding her that failure was not fatal. Marcus wasn't completely sure which. "He's a complicated man," Marcus said. "He is," Natalie agreed. "He's also the only parent I have left." She looked at the table. "So I keep that in one hand and everything else in the other, and I try to figure out the weight of it every day." A pause. "Does that make sense?" "It makes complete sense," Marcus said, "because he thought about Emma saying you're allowed and understood exactly what it meant to carry the people who made you while also carrying yourself forward." He walked her to her car afterward. The night was cool, the city around them, doing what cities do, moving lit indifferent and somehow companionable in its indifference. They stood on the sidewalk for a moment, in the particular suspension of an ending that doesn't want to end. "Thank you for dinner," Natalie said. "Thank you for asking," Marcus said. She looked at him, that direct, careful look, the one he'd learned was her truest face. "I'd like to do this again," she said. "If you would." "I would," he said. She nodded once like a decision confirmed. Then she said, "There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you earlier this week." She paused. "The board meeting tomorrow, the one I've been preparing for. There's a vote on the table about building maintenance contract renewals. My father put it on the agenda." She held his gaze. "Your department's contract is one of the ones under review." The sidewalk felt very still under Marcus's feet. "He put it on the agenda after Monday," Marcus said. It was not a question. "Yes," Natalie said. "I found out today. I have the votes to kill it, I control the board majority. But I wanted you to know." Her jaw was set. Her eyes were steady. "I wanted you to hear it from me." Marcus stood on the sidewalk outside a quiet restaurant on Clement Street and looked at the woman across from him and understood completely for the first time the full shape of what Richard Harrington was willing to do. Not just a background check, not just a cafe conversation, a formal board vote. The machinery of institutional power pointed at a maintenance department contract because a maintenance worker had dinner with his daughter. "Natalie," he said. "I'll handle it," she said. Her voice was very quiet and very certain. "I'm telling you so you're not blindsided. Not because I need you to do anything. I'll handle my father." He looked at her for a long moment. "I know you will," he said. She exhaled. "Good night, Marcus." "Good night, Natalie." She got in her car. He watched her pull into traffic and disappear into the city. He stood on the sidewalk alone, hands in his pockets, the night around him, and thought about circuit problems. About what happens when the wrong components meet the wrong load. About the fact that some systems left unchecked don't just trip, they burn. He thought about Emma, about the contract, about 32 other people in his department who showed up every morning and did their jobs and didn't know that a board meeting tomorrow might dismantle everything because a powerful man had decided that the cleanest solution to a personal problem was an institutional one. He took out his phone, looked at Richard Harrington's business card number, which he'd saved that afternoon. He put his phone back in his pocket. Not yet. He walked to his truck. The board meeting was at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Natalie had the votes. But Marcus had learned in 6 years of fixing things that other people had broken. That what people said about a problem and what the problem actually was were not always the same thing. And whatever was coming tomorrow, he was going to be ready for it. He didn't sleep well. That wasn't new. Marcus had a long history with restless nights, the kind that came not from anxiety exactly, but from the particular alertness of a mind that refused to stop working a problem just because the body needed rest. He lay in the dark and stared at the ceiling and ran through everything he knew about tomorrow's board meeting, the way he ran through a faulty circuit, tracing each connection, testing each load, looking for the place where the system would fail under pressure. Natalie had the votes. She'd said so directly, and she was not a woman who said things she wasn't certain of. But Richard Harrington had not built a $4 billion company by accepting the first loss. He was a man who ran background checks and cafe meetings and board agenda insertions simultaneously, and Marcus had lived long enough to know that people with that kind of patience for strategy rarely came with only one move on the table. He was up at 5:30, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table with Emma's finished science project still in the corner, waiting to be turned in, and thought about 32 people in his department who came to work every morning and did not know their contract was on a board agenda, because a CEO's father had decided a maintenance worker needed to be reminded of his place. That was the part that sat in his chest like a stone. Not his own job, he could find work he always had. But Dale, who had 2 kids in middle school and a wife going through physical therapy after a car accident. and Renata, who had been in the building for 11 years and knew every panel and every pipe and every quirk of the mechanical systems better than anyone, and Jerome at the security desk, who wasn't even maintenance, but who Marcus knew would feel the ripple if the contract collapsed and the whole structure shifted. People. Not variables. People. At 6:15, his phone rang. He picked it up expecting Dale's number or possibly Emma's school with some early morning botanical emergency. It was Natalie. "You're awake," she said, and her voice told him she had not slept either. "Have been since 5, he said. "You—" "I don't think I actually slept," she said. "I kept running board scenarios." A pause. "I have the votes, Marcus. I've confirmed with 4 members directly this morning." "4, he said. "How many total?" 9. "I need 5 to block. I have 4 confirmed, 1 who I'm 90% certain." A pause. "My father knows I have the votes. He put the item on the agenda anyway." Marcus turned his coffee mug on the table. Why would he do that if he knows he can't win? A silence that told him she had been sitting with this exact question. "Because the vote isn't the point," she said slowly. "The visibility is. Getting it on the record that a board member raised concerns about the maintenance contract. Creating a paper trail." She stopped. "He's building a file, Marcus. Not to win today. To have ammunition later." Marcus set his mug down. "For what?" "For the argument that my judgment is compromised," she said. "That I'm making decisions that affect the company based on personal entanglements." Her voice was controlled, but he could hear the edge underneath it, not fear something sharper than fear. Anger carefully managed. "If he can show a pattern the cafe meeting with you, the contract vote, any future decisions that touch anything connected to you, he can go to the board with a narrative. A narrative that you're not fit to lead," Marcus said. "Yes." The word landed in the quiet of his kitchen like something physical. He thought about Richard Harrington in the cafe. "She is the thing I cannot afford to get wrong." He had believed sitting across from the man that somewhere underneath the strategy was a genuine love that had simply curdled into control. He still believed that. But genuine love doing damage was still damage. "What do you need from me?" Marcus asked. "Nothing," she said immediately. "This is not your problem to solve. I called because I wanted you to hear it from me before the meeting, not because I expect you to do anything." "Natalie." "I mean it, Marcus. You have Emma. You have your job. You didn't sign up for Natalie." He said her name the second time more firmly, not unkindly. "Stop managing me. I'm not a board member you need to handle. Talk to me." A long pause. Then quietly, "I'm scared," she said. "I don't say that easily. But I'm scared that he will keep doing this, that every person I try to let in, he will find a way to make it cost them something. And eventually, people stop trying to get close because the cost is too high." A pause. Daniel stopped. Everyone before Daniel found a reason too. Her voice dropped. "I'm scared that I'm a person who is very good at being alone, and that my father has spent 15 years making sure of it." Marcus sat with that for a moment. With the weight of what she had just said, the specific, precise courage it took to say it. "Emma told me something last night," he said. "She said I was allowed to be happy." He paused. 8 years old. She said it like it was the simplest thing in the world. Natalie was quiet on the other end. "I've been thinking about that," he said. "About what it means to decide you're allowed. Not because the circumstances are perfect, not because the complications have been cleared away. Just deciding." He held his phone steady. "I'm not Daniel, and I'm not going to let your father turn a board vote about a maintenance contract into the reason I disappear." He heard her breath catch slightly. "Marcus, go win your vote," he said. "I'll be in the building, 3rd floor mechanical room, checking the HVAC pressure readings. If you need anything, call me." A long pause. Then, 3rd floor mechanical room. All morning. Another pause. "Thank you," she said. It was the same thank you as Thursday night in the office, the one that wasn't about the literal thing, the one that was about everything underneath it. "Go," he said. She went. Marcus finished his coffee, woke Emma, made breakfast, listened to her explain her revised theory about directional grass growth with the patience of a man who genuinely found his daughter interesting, which he did. He dropped her at school at 8, confirmed her project was in her backpack, watched her walk through the front doors, without looking back, the particular confidence of a child who feels safe enough not to, and drove to work. He signed in at 8:42. Jerome was at the desk. "You hear about the board meeting?" Jerome asked, keeping his voice low. Marcus looked at him. "What do you know about it?" "Building maintenance contract is on the agenda," Jerome said. "Dale got a call last night from HR informal, just a heads up. He was—" Jerome paused. "He's worried." "I know," Marcus said. "Where is he?" "Break room, second floor." Marcus found Dale at the coffee machine, which was Dale's natural habitat under stress. He was a broad, solid man in his 50s who had been in building maintenance for 23 years and approached most problems with the steadiness of someone who had seen worse. He did not look steady this morning. "Marcus," Dale said, and the single word carried the weight of the call he'd gotten last night and the family he was thinking about. "I know about the vote," Marcus said. "I know more about the context than you do. I'm going to tell you what I can, and then I need you to trust me." Dale looked at him. "How much more do you know?" "The contract vote is personal," Marcus said. "It's not about our work performance. It's not about cost. It's one board member using a procedural mechanism for a personal reason." He held Dale's gaze. "The CEO has the votes to block it. She confirmed this morning." Dale stared at him. "How do you know that?" "Because I talked to her," Marcus said. The break room was very quiet for a moment. "Marcus," Dale said slowly, "what exactly has been happening on the 42nd floor?" "I fixed her breakers," Marcus said, "and then some other things got complicated." He picked up a coffee cup. "The vote will fail. Our contract is safe, but I need you to keep this quiet. Don't tell the team there was ever a threat. It'll cause panic, and it's going to be resolved before lunch." Dale studied him for a long moment with the thoroughness of a man who has known Marcus for 6 years and is rapidly recalculating. "Are you—" He stopped, started again. "Are you and Ms. Harrington—" "We had dinner last night," Marcus said. "It's new. It's complicated. I'm handling it." Dale put his coffee down. He rubbed his face with one hand. Then he looked at Marcus with an expression that was equal parts disbelief and something warmer than that, something that was almost quietly proud. "You had dinner," Dale said. "Thursday night," Marcus confirmed. "With the CEO?" "With Natalie, yes." Dale picked his coffee back up. "Right," he said. "Okay." A pause. "She good to you?" The question so simple so entirely. Dale hit Marcus somewhere unguarded. "Yeah," he said. "She is." "Good," Dale said. "Then handle it." He pointed at Marcus with his coffee cup. "And fix whatever is wrong with the third floor HVAC because the pressure's been reading weird since Tuesday." "That's where I'm headed," Marcus said. He went to the third floor mechanical room and he worked steadily and quietly the way he always worked, finding what was wrong and making it right. The HVAC pressure issue was a partially blocked return duct, simple enough, 20 minutes of careful work. He cleared it, reset the readings, confirmed the system was balanced, and then sat in the quiet of the mechanical room and waited. His phone was in his pocket. He did not look at it. 9 o'clock came. 9:15, 9:30. At 9:47 his phone buzzed. Natalie's name. He answered immediately. "It failed," she said. "The vote failed. 4-5. The contract stands." Marcus exhaled. "Good." "My father voted with the minority," she said. "He said nothing during the meeting. He presented the agenda item, called for the vote lost, and moved on to the next item without a word." A pause. "That's not how he handles losing. He's never quiet when he loses." Marcus felt something in his chest tighten. "He's saving it," he said. I think so too, she said. Marcus, I need to tell you something. After the vote during the break, one of the board members came to me. Helen Chu. She's been on the board for 7 years. She's someone I trust. She told me that my father spoke to 3 board members individually this week, before the meeting. A pause. He told them he had concerns about my personal judgment. He mentioned the maintenance contract context without naming you specifically, but the implication was there. Marcus was quiet. He's been building this longer than I realized, Natalie said. The cafe meeting with you, the background check, those weren't the beginning. Helen showed me a chain of emails. He's been planting seeds with board members for weeks, since before he ever walked into my office Monday night. Weeks, Marcus said. Since at least 3 weeks ago, she said. Which means he knew something was changing before I was even in the picture, Marcus said slowly. A long pause. I've been working 80-hour weeks for 5 years, Natalie said quietly. And 3 weeks ago, I worked a Saturday and I left at 4 o'clock. I went to a museum, by myself. First time in 2 years I left before 8 on any day, including weekends. She paused. He must have noticed, and he interpreted it as a warning sign. Marcus turned that over. Richard Harrington watching his daughter for any sign of softening, any indication that the armor was developing a crack, and responding to a Saturday afternoon museum visit by beginning a preemptive board campaign. The devotion in that, and the damage in it sitting right next to each other, inseparable. He's afraid of losing you, Marcus said. Not to me specifically. To anyone. To the version of you that goes to museums on Saturdays, and sits on office floors, and leaves at 4 o'clock. Natalie was silent for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was different, quieter, more stripped. That's the most honest thing anyone has ever said about my father to my face. I sat across from him for 40 minutes, Marcus said. He's a man who loves you more than he trusts himself to survive losing you. And he's converted that love into control because control feels like safety. A pause. It's not. But that's what it feels like to him. I know, she said. I've known. She stopped. Knowing doesn't make it easier to be the one he does it to. No, Marcus said. It doesn't. A silence that was not uncomfortable. The mechanical room hummed around him, the building's systems running clean and balanced the way he'd left them. I'm going to talk to him, Natalie said. Today, not the way I usually do, not managed, not strategic. I'm going to tell him the truth about what he's been doing and what it costs. A pause. I've been not saying it for a long time because I didn't want the confrontation. But Helen showed me those emails, and I realized that not saying it hasn't protected anything. It's just given him more time to build. Do you want company? Marcus asked. No. She said it immediately, but without coldness. This is mine to do, but... A pause. Can I call you after? Yes, he said. Anytime. Okay. A breath. Marcus, the board member who voted with my father, the 4th vote in the minority, it wasn't who I expected. It was someone I've considered an ally for 3 years. She paused. His name is Patterson. He's been on the board since my father's era. I always thought he'd transition to supporting me, but apparently... He's your father's, Marcus said. He's my father's, she confirmed. Which means I've been operating with a false map. I thought I knew where everyone stood, and I had it wrong. A pause, and underneath it something that was not quite fear, but was in the same room as fear. If my father escalates this, if he goes beyond board maneuvers. He won't, Marcus said, and then more carefully, not if the conversation you're going to have today is the right one. How do you know what the right conversation looks like? I don't, Marcus said, but I think you do. I think you've known for a long time, and you've been choosing the managed version because the real one is harder. He paused. The real one is harder, and it's the only one that actually works. A long silence. You're very certain for a man who's known me 8 days, she said. You're very legible for a woman who thinks she's guarded, he said. She made a sound that was almost a laugh, not quite. I'll call you after, she said. "I'll be here," he said. She hung up. Marcus sat in the mechanical room for a while longer, listening to the systems he'd balanced, the even hum of things running the way they should. Pressure, steady flow. Correct? Nothing. Strained. Nothing. Overtaxed. He thought about Richard Harrington watching his daughter leave early on a Saturday, and quietly beginning to build a case against the future he saw coming. He thought about Natalie walking into a conversation she'd been postponing for years with the particular courage of someone who has finally decided that the cost of avoidance is higher than the cost of truth. He thought about Emma. "You're allowed." At 11:15, Dale texted him, "Heard from HR. Contract confirmed. Renewal on schedule. Whatever you did, thank you." Marcus typed back, "I fixed a pressure reading, that's all." 3 dots appeared. Then, "Sure you did." He pocketed his phone and went back to work. The building needed him. 3rd floor was done, but there was a reported issue on 7, a flickering light bank near the elevator lobby that 3 different people had submitted tickets about in the past week. Marcus had a theory about it, a loose connection in the junction box behind the ceiling panel, probably vibration-related given its proximity to the elevator shaft. Small things, if ignored, became large things. That was true of circuits, and it was true of most everything else. He took the stairs to 7 because the elevator was right next to the problem, and he didn't want to introduce more vibration while he was trying to diagnose the source of it. He found the ceiling panel, opened it, and confirmed his theory. In under 3 minutes, a terminal connection that had worked itself loose over months of accumulated vibration, barely making contact enough to power the lights under normal load, but causing a flicker every time the elevator passed. He fixed it in 7 minutes. The lights above him went steady and even. He stood on the 7th floor and looked at the fixed lights and thought that this was essentially what he did. Found the thing that had worked itself loose and made the connection solid again. Sometimes the problem was a breaker. Sometimes it was a neutral wire. Sometimes it was 2 people who kept circling each other without quite making contact. His phone rang. Natalie. He answered. She said nothing for a moment. He heard her breathing slower than usual. The particular rhythm of someone who has just finished something difficult. "I talked to him," she said. "How did it go?" "He cried," she said, and there was wonder in it. Not mockery, genuine wonder, the wonder of someone who has watched a fortress finally develop a crack. "He hasn't cried in front of me since my mother's funeral. He sat in his chair and he cried, and he said," she stopped. "He said he knows he does it. The control. He said he's known for years. He said he doesn't know how to stop because when he lets go, he feels like he's already lost." Marcus was quiet. "I told him about Daniel," she said. "The real version. Not the version where Daniel's character failed. The version where my father created conditions that were impossible and then called Daniel's exit a personal flaw." She paused. He didn't argue. He just sat with it. Her voice was very quiet. "I've never seen him not argue, Marcus. He argues with everything. It's how he breathes." "What did you say to him?" "I said that I loved him, and that what he'd been doing was going to cost him the one thing he was trying to protect," she said. "That if he kept using the company as a weapon every time he was afraid of losing me, eventually I would have to choose between the company and him. And that was not a choice I wanted to make." A pause. "And then I told him about you. Directly. Not the managed version." She exhaled. "I told him that I had dinner with a man who makes me feel like a person instead of a position, and that he was a single father who goes home to his daughter and leaves cookies on plates with smiley faces, and that if he ran another background check, or put another agenda item on a board meeting, or called another board member with concerns about my judgment, I would remove him from his advisory role entirely." The floor of the 7th floor corridor was very steady under Marcus's feet. "How did he take that?" he asked. "He nodded," she said. "Just nodded, like someone receiving a verdict they had been expecting and had decided to accept." A long pause. "And then he asked what Emma's last name was." Marcus's heart did something complicated. "What did you tell him?" "Cole," she said. "I told him Emma Cole, and he wrote it down. A pause. He wrote it down, Marcus, in his notebook, like she was someone he was going to need to remember. Marcus stood on the 7th floor of Harrington Tower, holding his phone with the steady lights above him and the city below him, and the hum of a building running clean through his feet, and felt something shift in the architecture of everything, not dramatically, not all at once, but the way structural things shift when a load is finally distributed correctly, quietly, permanently. "Natalie," he said. "I know," she said, softly. "I know." They stayed on the line for a moment without speaking, which was its own kind of language. The language of two people who had arrived somewhere without quite mapping the route and were standing at the edge of it taking stock. "Emma has a science presentation Friday," Marcus said finally. "About phototropism, plants growing toward light." A pause. "She'd probably explain it to anyone who was willing to listen." At length. The silence on the other end of the line held something warm. "I would listen," Natalie said carefully. "If that were ever I would listen." "I know you would," Marcus said. Outside the building's windows, 42 floors below and 7 floors above the lobby, the city went on in every direction, indifferent, ordinary, full of people making decisions and connections, and course corrections trying to grow toward whatever light they could find, not always choosing the direction, just going. "Go finish your day," Marcus said. "You just did something hard. Take a breath." "I have 3 more meetings," she said. "Take the breath anyway," he said, "between the meetings." A pause. "Okay," she said. "Marcus?" "Yeah." "You fixed my lights," she said. "And then you—" She stopped. "Thank you." "Anytime," he said. He meant it in every possible way. She hung up. Marcus pocketed his phone, picked up his toolbox, and walked down the 7th floor corridor toward the stairs, and the lights above him were steady and even, and the building breathed around him, and somewhere above him a woman was taking a breath between meetings. And somewhere across the city, a little girl was in a classroom explaining to anyone who would listen that plants don't choose to grow toward light, they just do. Because that is the nature of living things, and because the light is there, and because some directions, once found, are impossible to turn away from. He took the stairs down. He had work to do. He did it. Friday arrived the way endings sometimes do not with drama, but with the particular clarity of a day that knows it matters. Marcus picked Emma up from school at 3:15, and she came through the front doors holding her science project board in both arms, like it was something fragile and important, which it was. Her teacher had given the class time to present that morning. Emma had gone third. She told Marcus this in the car, with the compressed efficiency of someone who had more to report than the car ride would allow. "Mrs. Pelletier said my hypothesis was well supported," Emma said. "Which means she liked it, but she doesn't want to just say she liked it, because then everyone would want that." "That's a very sophisticated read of your teacher," Marcus said. "I've been studying her," Emma said simply. "She does the same thing with the word interesting. When she says something is interesting, it means she thinks you got it wrong, but she respects you too much to say so directly." Marcus glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Emma." "What?" "You're 8. "I know," she said, unbothered. "Did something happen today? You have the neck thing again." He had been hoping she wouldn't notice until he had figured out how to say it. He should have known better. "Something good happened," he said carefully. "I'll tell you about it at home." She accepted that with the patience of someone who knows they will get the information eventually and is willing to wait. She turned to look out the window. Then, "Is it about Natalie?" Marcus kept his eyes on the road. "Why would you ask that?" "Because the neck thing is different when it's work complicated versus people complicated," Emma said. "This is people complicated, and the only new people thing recently is Natalie." A pause. "Also, you said her name in your sleep Wednesday night. I heard you when I got up for water." "I did not." Marcus stopped. "I was talking in my sleep." "Just her name," Emma said helpfully. "Once. I didn't want to embarrass you, so I didn't mention it." She looked back out the window. "So, is it about Natalie?" "Yes." Marcus said. It's about Natalie. Good, Emma said. And that was all she said for the rest of the drive, which was somehow the most complete response she could have given. At home, Marcus made grilled cheese. Emma's requested Friday food, non-negotiable, and they sat at the kitchen table, and he told her, in the edited but honest version he had been composing during the drive about the week, about Richard Harrington and the board vote, and the conversation Natalie had finally had with her father. He left out the parts that were too complicated for grilled cheese on a Friday, but he didn't leave out the shape of it. Emma listened, the way she always listened completely without interrupting, with the sandwich halfway to her mouth forgotten. When he finished, she set the sandwich down. So her dad was trying to make you disappear, Emma said. He was trying to protect her, Marcus said. In a way that was also trying to make me disappear, yes. But she stopped him. She did. Emma picked up her sandwich, thought about it for a moment. She sounds brave, she said. She is, Marcus said. Braver than she knows, Emma said, which was such a specific and precise observation that Marcus sat with it for a moment, wondering where exactly his daughter had learned to see people that way. Yeah, he said finally. Probably. Emma took a bite, chewed. Can I meet her? The question landed on the kitchen table between them, simple and direct, the way Emma asked everything that mattered. That's not something we decide at the kitchen table on a Friday, Marcus said. Why not? We decide most things at the kitchen table. This one involves another person. 2 other people, Emma corrected. Her and you. You're already decided, I can tell. She looked at him with those eyes, the ones that had been reading him since she was old enough to have opinions. Dad, it's okay. You're allowed, remember. He looked at his daughter across the kitchen table, at the grilled cheese and the science project leaning against the wall, and the stuffed elephant that had somehow migrated from her bedroom to the chair beside her, which was its usual Friday position. At the entirely ordinary, extraordinary reality of this person he had made and raised, and did not deserve the full measure of. I remember, he said. Good, Emma said. Now eat your sandwich before it gets cold. He ate his sandwich. His phone buzzed at 4:47, Natalie's name. He answered and walked to the hallway, and Emma, with the diplomatic awareness of someone who understood when to give space, became very interested in her science project. Hi, Natalie said. Her voice was different from the morning lighter, but with something tentative underneath the lightness, like a person testing ice before their full weight. Hi, Marcus said. How was the rest of your day? Long, she said. The 3 meetings I mentioned, plus 2 more I didn't anticipate, plus my father sent me flowers to my office, which he has never done in my professional memory. A pause. White tulips. My mother's favorite. I cried in the bathroom for 4 minutes and then fixed my face and went back to my meeting. 4 minutes, Marcus said. I timed it, she said. I didn't want to be late. Natalie, he said, and it came out warm and helpless and entirely honest. I know, she said. I'm a lot. You're exactly enough, he said. The words came out before he'd finished deciding to say them, which was becoming a pattern around her that he was starting to trust rather than manage. A silence. A real one, the kind that meant something had just shifted, and both people were feeling the ground under the new position. Marcus, she said, I want to ask you something, and I want you to know that there is no pressure in this question, and the right answer is whatever is true for you. Go ahead, he said. Tomorrow, she said. Saturday. I know you have Emma. I was wondering. A pause. The Botanical Garden on Park Presidio has a new phototropism exhibit. I looked it up after you told me about Emma's project. It opened last weekend. It's interactive. There are these stations where kids can actually manipulate light sources and watch plant response in real time. She stopped. I thought if Emma would want to go. If you would want to go. Another pause. All 3 of us. Marcus stood in his hallway and heard his daughter in the kitchen, humming something to her stuffed elephant, and thought about the botanical garden and an interactive exhibit, and Natalie Harrington looking up phototropism exhibits at some point during a day that had included a board vote and a father's tears and 4 minutes of crying in a bathroom. "She will absolutely want to go," he said. "Yeah, she will talk about phototropism for the entire drive there and the entire drive home, and probably in her sleep," he said. "You've been warned." He heard Natalie exhale something that was relief, and something that was warmer than relief. "I can handle it," she said. "I want to." 10 o'clock, he said. 10 o'clock, she said. "I'll meet you at the main entrance." He went back to the kitchen. Emma looked up from her project with the carefully arranged casualness of someone who had been listening as much as she could without technically eavesdropping. "So," he said, sitting back down. "So," she said. "There's an interactive phototropism exhibit at the Botanical Garden on Park Presidio," he said. "It opened last week. You can manipulate light sources and watch live plant responses." Emma's carefully arranged casualness evaporated instantly. "That's real," she said. "That's an actual thing that exists." "Opens at 10 tomorrow," he said. "Dad." She said his name with the urgency of someone who cannot believe an opportunity is being handled so calmly. "Dad, that's exactly what my second project needs. I could observe the—" "We're going with Natalie," he said. Emma went perfectly still. Then, very deliberately, she picked up the remaining quarter of her grilled cheese. She took a bite. She chewed. She was performing composure with the same transparent effort that Marcus sometimes performed composure, and he recognized it because it was his own habit in her hands. "Okay," she said with enormous studied nonchalance. "Okay," he said. "I'm not going to be weird about it," she said. "I know." "I'm just going to be normal," she said. "You're never normal," he said. "That's not a criticism. It's a fact." She considered this. "Okay," she said again, and then not quite managing the nonchalance. "What's she like in person? Not the explained version. What's she actually like?" Marcus thought about Natalie on the floor of her office at midnight. Natalie saying, "I don't usually ask people to stay." Natalie turning her phone face down at dinner and explaining that her father never missed a 9:30 quote. Natalie crying 4 minutes exactly in a bathroom and then fixing her face and going back to her meeting. "She's honest," he said. "Almost uncomfortably honest. She doesn't perform things she doesn't feel. She asks real questions and she actually wants the real answers." He paused. "She killed her cactus by overwatering it because she was trying too hard to take care of it." Emma processed that. "That's sad," she said, "but also relatable. I almost killed the basil on the windowsill in 2nd grade for the same reason." "I know," Marcus said. "I watched you do it. You could have said something." "You were learning," he said. Emma looked at the basil that was now 2 years later thriving on the same windowsill, having survived Emma's devoted over-attention and arrived at a more sustainable equilibrium. She looked at it for a moment with an expression Marcus couldn't entirely read. "Okay," she said for the 3rd time. But this okay was different, quieter, more settled. The okay of someone who has made a real decision rather than a performed one. "I'll try not to talk too much about phototropism." "Don't do that," Marcus said immediately. She blinked. "What? Don't make yourself smaller because someone new is there," he said. "Talk about phototropism. Talk about grass growth patterns and directional light and your second project and whatever else is in your head. That's who you are." He held her gaze. "The people worth keeping are the ones who want the real version." Emma looked at her father for a long moment. Then she nodded once, a small serious nod, the kind that meant she had received the information and was storing it somewhere important. "Okay," she said. "I'm going to need to do some research tonight about the exhibit." "Of course you are," Marcus said. She was already reaching for her tablet. Saturday morning came in sharp and clear, the kind of San Francisco morning that apologizes for the fog by making the light particularly good. Marcus drove. Emma sat in the back with her notebook she had, as promised, done research, and had arrived at the car with 4 pages of notes about the specific plant varieties the exhibit was known to feature and 3 follow-up questions she intended to pose to the exhibit staff. "You said you weren't going to be weird about it," Marcus said. "The notebook is for the exhibit," Emma said. "Not for being weird. There's a difference." "Is there, Dad?" she said patiently. "I'm a scientist. Scientists bring notebooks." "You're 8. Scientists start young." He parked 2 blocks from the botanical garden because Saturday parking was its own ecosystem. They walked Emma with her notebook, Marcus with the particular internal quiet of a man who is about to do something that matters and is choosing not to overthink it. Natalie was at the main entrance at 10 o'clock exactly. She was wearing a dark jacket over a simple shirt, and she had her hair down, and she looked. Marcus thought like herself, not the CEO version, not the midnight office version, but something that might be the version underneath both of those. She saw them from 20 feet away, and her face did the thing. It did, the composure softening before she could curate it. She looked at Emma first. Emma looked at her. For a moment, the two of them simply assessed each other with the frank mutual attention of people who have heard about each other and are now running the comparison. Then Emma said, "Your cactus would have survived if you'd checked the soil moisture before watering. Cacti need the top inch to be completely dry first." Natalie blinked. Then she looked at Marcus. "I told her about the cactus," he said. Natalie looked back at Emma. "I didn't know that," she said seriously. "About the soil moisture." "Most people don't," Emma said. "The watering instinct is wrong for desert plants. They're adapted to scarcity, so abundance confuses them." She paused. "I could help you pick a new one, if you wanted. I know which varieties are most forgiving." Something moved across Natalie's face, quick and unguarded, and entirely real. Not the almost laugh Marcus had learned to recognize. Something quieter than that. The expression of someone receiving something they hadn't known they needed. "I would like that very much," Natalie said. Emma nodded with the solemnity of an agreement being formalized. Then she looked at the botanical garden entrance. "The phototropism exhibit is in the East Wing," she said. "I have notes." She held up the notebook as evidence. "We should probably start there." "We should probably start there," Natalie agreed. They went in. The exhibit was everything Emma had researched, and a few things she hadn't anticipated, which was the best possible outcome. She moved through it with the focused energy of someone for whom this was both personal validation and professional development, touching the light source controls. Watching the plant response, asking the exhibit staff questions that made 2 of them pause and look at each other before answering. Marcus watched Natalie watching Emma. He watched her crouch down to Emma's level at one of the interactive stations, genuinely interested in what Emma was showing her, asking follow-up questions that were real questions, not adult-performing interest for a child questions. He watched Emma clock the difference and lean into it, talking faster, going deeper, pulling out the notebook to show Natalie her pre-arrival research, which Natalie studied with the same attention she'd given her legal folders at midnight in her office. "Your hypothesis here is interesting," Natalie said, pointing at Emma's notes. "You're predicting that the response rate would vary by leaf size. Have you found any data on that?" Emma's eyes went wide. "That's exactly what I want to test for my second project," she said. "Nobody's shown me data yet. The exhibit staff didn't know." "I might know someone," Natalie said. "There's a botanist who consults for a foundation we work with. She's published on exactly this. Would you want me to see if she'd be willing to talk to you?" Emma turned to Marcus with an expression that was pure uncontained 8-year-old and said, "Dad." "I see it," he said. "She's..." Emma gestured at Natalie with her notebook. "She's good." "I know," Marcus said. "You did good," Emma said with the complete and direct approval of someone whose opinion he had not realized he was waiting for until he received it. Natalie heard this. She looked at the exhibit display in front of her with sudden great interest. But Marcus could see the side of her face, and what was on it was not composure. It was something that needed a moment to settle. He let it settle. They stayed 2 hours. Emma filled 6 more pages of notes. At one point, she got into a detailed discussion with a teenage volunteer about whether the exhibit's light spectrum replication was accurate enough for the results to be scientifically valid, and the volunteer, who was 17 and had clearly not expected to be challenged on this by someone a decade younger, held his own admirably, and Emma respected him for it, and told him so directly, which seemed to both embarrass and delight him. They walked out into the late morning together. Emma was talking about her second project. Then she stopped talking mid-sentence. Marcus and Natalie both looked at her. Emma was looking at a small display garden near the exit, a collection of container plants arranged to demonstrate different growth conditions. In the corner of the display, slightly apart from the others, was a small barrel cactus in a terracotta pot with a little card that said, "Touch friendly. Please feel the soil before assuming it needs water." Emma walked over to it. She felt the soil. She looked back at Natalie. "Completely dry," she said. "It's fine, but someone needs to tell the staff." She picked up the card, read it, put it back. Then she looked at the cactus for a moment with the expression of someone reaching a decision. She looked at Natalie. "Do you want it?" Natalie blinked. "It belongs to the exhibit." "I know," Emma said. "I meant, do you want one? Like it? I know where to get them. There's a place on Irving Street. They're not expensive. They have good ones." She held Natalie's gaze with her steady, direct, entirely unself-conscious eyes. "I could help you pick one that suits you. And I could show you how to take care of it properly this time." The late morning light fell across the three of them, and the city moved beyond the garden walls, and Marcus Cole stood next to Natalie Harrington and watched his 8-year-old daughter offer the CEO of a $4 billion company a cactus tutorial with the same matter-of-fact generosity she brought to everything she did. Natalie looked at Emma for a long moment. Then she said very quietly, "Yes, I'd like that." Emma nodded. Done. Settled. She wrote something in her notebook. Marcus could not see what, and tucked it under her arm and started walking toward the exit because she was ready to go, and that was that. Marcus and Natalie fell into step a few feet behind her. "She's remarkable," Natalie said low enough that Emma couldn't hear. "I know," Marcus said. "She gave me a cactus tutorial like it was the most natural thing in the world." "That's how she gives everything," Marcus said. "She doesn't make a thing of it. She just does it." Natalie was quiet for a moment. They walked. Emma was 10 feet ahead, still writing in her notebook while walking, which was both characteristic and statistically inadvisable. "Marcus," Natalie said. "Yeah, I want to tell you something, and I want to say it clearly so there's no ambiguity." She kept her voice even. "I know this is new. I know the circumstances have been a lot for a first week. My father, the board, the whole weight of it landing on someone who just came to fix some breakers." She paused. "I know that's a lot to ask anyone to walk toward." "You didn't ask me," Marcus said. "I walked toward it." She looked at him. "There's a difference," he said. The same words she'd used about showing up versus saying you'll show up returned to her now because he meant them exactly as much as she had. She held his gaze for a moment. Then she looked forward at Emma 10 feet ahead, still writing, still walking, still completely herself. "She's going to have opinions about the cactus selection," Natalie said. "She has opinions about everything," Marcus said. "It's relentless and wonderful." "I think I'm going to like it," Natalie said. "I think you already do," he said. She didn't argue with that. Emma stopped at the garden gate, turned, waited for them with the patience of someone who has places to be, but will allow the adults their moment. She looked at them walking toward her, her father and this woman who asked real questions, and didn't perform things she didn't feel and wanted a cactus, and had 4 minutes of crying in her schedule, and she looked at them together with those steady reading eyes of hers. And she seemed satisfied with what she saw. "Irving Street," she said when they reached her, confirming the agenda. "Irving Street," Marcus agreed. Emma turned and walked out through the gate into the city, notebook under her arm Saturday morning, all around her, entirely certain of the direction. Marcus and Natalie followed. That afternoon, in a small plant shop on Irving Street, run by a woman named Gloria, who had strong opinions about drainage and no patience for people who underestimated succulents. Emma Cole selected a Phaerocactus wisleysani, a barrel cactus. She explained to Natalie with a predictable growth pattern and very clear soil moisture, signals forgiving of inconsistency, but responsive to genuine attention, and she presented it to Natalie with both hands and a card she had written in the shop, using Gloria's pen. The card said, "Water when dry. Not before. It knows what it needs." Natalie held the cactus and read the card and did not cry, which cost her something, and Marcus could see it, and he did not say anything about it, which was the right call. Later, when Emma was in the back seat of the car with her notebook and her new data and her satisfied scientist's quiet, and Natalie was standing at her own car, 2 spaces down, Marcus walked over. "Thank you," he said, "for today." "Thank you for letting me come," she said. She was holding the cactus in the crook of her arm like something worth being careful with. "Marcus, I need you to know something." She looked at him directly. That look, the one that was her truest face, the one that didn't perform and didn't manage and didn't leave room for ambiguity. "I'm in this. Whatever this is, wherever it goes. I'm not going to disappear because it gets complicated. I don't do things halfway." "I know," he said. "I just wanted to say it out loud," she said. "So, it was real." "It's real," he said. She nodded, looked down at the cactus, then back at him. "Call me tonight. After Emma's in bed," he said. "After Emma's in bed," she agreed. She got in her car. He walked back to his. Emma looked up from her notebook when he got in. She waited approximately 1.5 seconds before she said, "She's good for you, I've decided." "Thank you for your input," Marcus said. "You're welcome," Emma said, entirely serious. "It was an informed decision. I observed for 2 hours." She looked back at her notebook. "I'm going to title my second project, Directional Growth Under Variable Light Conditions, a Study in Adaptive Response. Do you think that's too long?" "Absolutely not," Marcus said. "Good," she said. "I thought so too." He started the car. They pulled into Saturday traffic, the city around them ordinary and indifferent and full of its own business, and Emma wrote in her notebook. And Marcus drove, and somewhere behind them, Natalie Harrington merged into different traffic with a barrel cactus in the passenger seat and a card that said, "It knows what it needs," and the day moved forward, the way good days do, not perfectly, not without complication, but forward steadily towards something real. 3 weeks later, Richard Harrington appeared at Marcus's truck in the Harrington Tower parking structure at 7:45 in the morning. He was holding 2 coffees. He held one out without preamble. Marcus took it. They stood in the parking structure in the particular silence of 2 men who have already said the hard things and are now figuring out what comes after. "I owe you an apology," Richard said. "A direct one, not through my daughter." "I'm listening," Marcus said. "I ran your background check. I used the board agenda as a mechanism. I called board members with concerns I framed professionally, but intended personally." He held Marcus's gaze without flinching from it, which Marcus gave him credit for. "I was protecting Natalie in a way that was also controlling her. You told me those weren't the same thing. You were right." Marcus drank his coffee. "What changed?" "She showed me a photograph," Richard said. "From Saturday, at the Botanical Garden. Your daughter is explaining something to Natalie. She has a notebook. She's pointing at something, and Natalie is—" He stopped. "Natalie is laughing. Not the professional one, not the managed one." He looked at his own coffee. "I haven't seen that laugh in 6 years. Not since her mother." The parking structure was quiet around them. Somewhere above them, 42 floors up the building, was beginning its day. "Mr. Harrington," Marcus said. "Richard," the older man said. Marcus considered that for a moment. "Richard," he said, "I'm not going to ask you to approve of me. I don't need that." He held the man's gaze. "But I will tell you this. Your daughter is one of the most honest people I have ever met. She tells the truth even when it costs her. She asks real questions. She shows up." He paused. "She got that from somewhere, and I think you know where." Richard Harrington looked at Marcus Cole in a parking structure at 7:45 in the morning and said nothing for a long moment. Then he said, She gets the stubbornness from her mother. That tracks, Marcus said. Richard almost smiled. Almost. Emma, he said. Natalie tells me she has strong opinions about cacti. About most things, Marcus said. The cacti are just current. I'd like to meet her, Richard said. At some point, if that's ever... He stopped. If that's ever appropriate. Marcus looked at him. At the man who had priced him in a lobby and called a cafe meeting and put a board agenda item against his department's contract and written his daughter's name in a notebook at the end of a conversation that had broken something open. At the man who sent Churchill quotes every night at 9:30 because his wife had died and his daughter was all he had left and he didn't know how to hold on without gripping too hard. I'll ask Emma, Marcus said. She makes her own decisions about people. Richard nodded slowly. Fair, he said. He left the same way he'd arrived, without ceremony, without looking back. Marcus watched him go and drank his coffee and thought about the particular work of building things that last, how it required the right components and the right connections and the patience to do it correctly rather than fast, and how the most important systems were always the ones that looked simple from the outside and were anything but. He took the elevator to the 42nd floor. He knocked on Suite 4200. Come in, Natalie called. She was at her desk, blazer on, hair-up, phone in hand, fully assembled, fully herself. She looked up when he came in, and the composure did what it always did when he walked into the room. It softened at the edges. She didn't try to stop it anymore. Your father was in the parking structure, Marcus said. I know, she said. He told me he was going to. She set her phone down. How was it? He wants to meet Emma, Marcus said. Natalie went still. What did you say? I said I'd ask her. He set his toolbox down. She'll say yes. She's curious about him. She thinks people who cause complicated problems are more interesting than people who don't. Natalie looked at him for a moment. Then she said, She's going to figure him out in about 4 minutes. Probably 3, Marcus said. And Natalie Harrington smiled. Not the almost one. Not the managed one. The real one. The one that changed her whole face and had been waiting for a long time for a room safe enough to live in. And Marcus Cole stood in her office in the full morning light of a day that was already making sense, and the city moved below them, and Emma was at school with her second project and her notebook, and her absolute certainty that living things grow toward light, not because they choose to, but because that is simply what living things do, and everything that had started with a blown circuit and a midnight call and a wrench-hitting marble and a question that changed the shape of everything. It's late. Do you want to sleep here tonight? Had arrived without rushing, without pretending, without anyone disappearing when it got hard exactly where it was always going to go. Here, steady, real. And that was enough. That was in fact everything.